Welcome. My name is LG Hakamo, security architect at PAF. This morning I took the continuous pain concept a bit too far by falling out of the bathtub, hurting my ribs. So if I mess things up, there is a reason behind that one. Every presentation you've ever been to at every conference, this is the boring slide, I know, but there is a purpose with this one. I think it's important that you understand the background of PAF and why we're doing the things we're doing. So we are a gambling company. We've been around for quite many years, based on the Åland Island. So you see the bit larger geotag between Finland and Sweden, quite small island. But we were created in order to basically generate profit for the benefit of society. So the profit that we make, we push that back into society for good causes. We were quite early on with the online business as well, already 20 years ago. We do take responsible gaming very seriously as well. We allow the customers to set all the various deposit and withdrawal limits, gaming freezes, whatever. So we want to have a very long relationship with the customer. We do concentrate on going to the regulated markets. So we apply for the license, go through a quite lengthy audit usually, hopefully get the certification, and then we can operate in that country. As of May this year, we've also gone through the ISO 27001 certification. So we do get audited multiple times per year. Some takeaways for today, relation to compliance and regulations and certification. So you need to understand the requirements in order to fulfill them, of course. Try to automate as much as possible and visualize your data in order to understand and to take further actions on that data. Just to set the mood a bit here. I'm not sure if anyone of you have read the Divine Comedy by Dante, but it's the first part of that book is about describing the 9 circles of a hell, and as he's standing at the gates of hell, there's this inscription on the wall. So let's step inside hell and see what we can find. Pain, misery, and eternal damnation. We have within EU, so we're from Finland. We have the GDPR regulations. So that basically defines what information is personal identifiable or sensitive information, basically. So your name, bank account number, email address, etc. GDPR also gives you the right to be forgotten, as it's called. So if you make a purchase on an online site and you start receiving a lot of newsletters and basically being spammed by that company, you send them an email and say, okay, please forget me. And you should be forgotten and the newsletters should stop. Then we have something called AML, the anti-money laundering regulations. So that's in order for the authorities to be able to investigate any monetary transactions related to organized crime or terrorist funding. There's a bit of contradiction between GDPR and AML. So AML states that you need to store everything related to the monetary transactions for 10 years after the relationship with the customer has ended. Remember what I said about GDPR, the right to be forgotten? Doesn't really match, but at least you don't get the newsletters anymore. So it's then for us, working as a gambling company, we do have the country-specific requirements on each of the markets as well. That could be, well, the biggest one is change management. Who changed what at what time, and when was that change done to production? Other things could be, you need to store all application logs for 5 years, or you need to store all the audit trail logs for 6 years. Basically what we do with those is we take the worst of those and just follow then it's usually fine. On top of all of this, we have decided to go with ISO, the 27001. So that one is all about information security. And it's basically two questions you need to ask yourself. What are the assets, and how do you control the access to those assets? With all the audits, they will ensure that you have the documented processes in place and that you are able to provide evidence that you're actually following. Auditors are... Is there any auditor in this audience? Good. I put in a quote there that basically everything you say can and will be held against you in an audit. And that's very true. Don't give them the pinky because they will chop off the hand, basically. So keep it short and focused. This is a quite good example on how wrong it can go when you don't understand your requirements. So last year I stumbled upon this candy shop here in San Francisco. And when I was preparing my travels for this trip, I tried to browse their website. And they say that due to GDPR, I can't view that one. So there's a clear misunderstanding of the requirements of compliance and regulations. So you've done all your homework, you have your process in place, you have your evidences. You have gone through the marathon with the auditors, and you get certified. So yes, let's celebrate. The day after, or 2 days after, depending on how much you celebrate, you're probably not fully compliant anymore. Why is that? Well, humans suck, that's one thing, but usually it's because we have a lot of manual processes, and there are small changes being done over time which are not verified against your compliance requirements. So basically it leads up to a stop the line event where the CISO is running down the hallway saying that drop everything you have because we need to prepare for the audit again. It's a complete waste of time and resources and people's sanity, in short. So how can we actually solve this one? Well, you can run, but we are in Dantes Health, so there's probably a circle full of auditors. They will find you and they will audit you. So we need a process to actually resolve this one. And in my opinion, that one is DevSecOps. So why security? I was talking to somebody yesterday and said that compliance and security is not the same thing, but you can't have compliance without security. So that's sort of my opinion on that one. But also with GDPR and the AML regulations, there is actually a financial risk that if you have a data breach, you will get fined, and that's a lot of money. If you look at the application lifecycle, traditional setup, you would probably towards the end of the test deploy stage, that's when you will get a manual penetration testing being done by an external party, which is way too late in the process. So what you need to do is divide and conquer, basically. So you need to test early and test often. You need to shift everything left, basically. The biggest thing, and this is probably the biggest issue, you can implement all the tooling you want, but if you don't get people in the organization to actually start thinking security, do risk assessments or threat modeling, you will still have all the same issues and nobody's actually fixing them. So. I'm going to dive a bit deeper into one of the subjects. So the life cycle I showed, that also applies for the infrastructure. So one thing we are looking into is the hardening of that one. So we rely on the CIS benchmarks. So we are the cloud provider we are using is AWS. So the benchmarks are divided into certain categories: account management, logging, monitoring, network, that allows you to get basically a benchmark of your setup. So in order to actually automate this process, we turn to a tool called Prowler. So it's an open source project. And it comes with quite a few, well, it comes with all of the CIS benchmarks checks out of the box. And there are quite a few contributors on the project, so they've been adding extra checks on that one. So basically, each of that check is a bash script, which invokes the AWS CLI on the command line. So Prowler will run through them and produces an output. We're running this in Jenkins, and since it's a cross-functional thing, you will not expect anybody willingly go in and look at the results in Jenkins unless they are forced to. So we took this a bit further. Sorry about the simpleness of this picture, but it is actually not more difficult to do this. Prowler requires a few permissions in order to run the checks on the AWS accounts. So those we have configured on each of the accounts. We have a custom Docker image which contains Prowler, and we have added some extra customizations in order to do whitelisting, etc. And that's being run from our Jenkins setup, and the results are published to Sumo Logic for further processing. If you look at the Sumo Logic side, first of all, being and working with compliance, having a certified provider, it's so much easier. You sit in an audit, you get the certification paper from the providers, and it's a lot easier to actually talk to the auditors. Few details on the actual implementation. So we have a HTTP collector receiving all the information using the field extraction rules, in order to query on the checks and the categories, and also on the specific AWS account that is being affected. Using the query parameters, we can reuse the queries and map the AWS account numbers into human readable text. So instead of selecting the account number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we can select the account production. So it's a lot easier for others to actually query the results. One thing that we are going to implement as well is to actually identify trends. Are we increasing or decreasing in terms of the failed checks, for instance? And another thing is the correlation with the change management. We want to see, okay, this change in this setup caused this check to fail. So we can actually connect those two together. So all in all, we get a single pane of glass that provides this overview for us. A few simple dashboards. And as I mentioned at the beginning, you need to visualize your data in order to get better understanding of the situation. So a good example is here. Why are we having so many failures in the 2.9, for instance? You need to ask you questions and perform a root cause analysis on that one. So it could be, are we missing certain resources in terms of HR, for instance? Do we need trainings for developers in order for them to increase the knowledge? As a final thing, there is an alternative to this as well. If you want to go sort of full automation, so AWS has the Security Hub. It's basically a ready-made service from them. It does come with the CIS benchmarks as well out of the box. And you have the ready-made app in Sumo Logic as well, so it's really simple to get that up and running. It has a pluggable architecture, so you get new installations from the AWS marketplace, from certain providers, in order to get more information out of that setup. The thing that we are not using this one is that we have some whitelists that we need to have in place, and getting like AWS config and guard duty and those into place, at least as far as I know, it doesn't allow us to do that one. So, and we are not that big of a shop, so we can sort of, it's good enough to go with the Prowler setup for us. But it's a very good alternative if you have the money as well for it. So. Thank you so much. Any questions, comments?
Yes.
You mentioned about an open source tool called Prowler.
Yep.
Could you tell or give us some examples about how you've used the tool to run some of your own custom scripts, which are not present,
Yeah, so we have checks for, so I mentioned each of the checks are basically a bash script. So if you have any command line tool that you can invoke and get the result back, you can convert that result into a pass or fail for that check. So you can write a small Python script that goes against your GitHub API, for instance, to check do you have protection on your master branches of your repositories, or do you have pull review being mandatory on going to master, for instance. So anything that's command line based, you can basically get the result out from that one.
So I have a question regarding automation and remediation. Do you do any type of automated scripting or automated remediation when it comes to security incidents?
No, not at the moment.
Is that something you have on the horizon?
Not at the moment. It would be nice, but not at the moment. We don't have it now.
Okay, thanks.
You mentioned something called Macy on that last slide. What's that?
It's brain freeze. That's a good time to get that one. I have to get back to you on that one. I'm sorry.
Any questions? I have one. Do you use any of those dashboards or results as part of the audit process?
No, we actually don't. And the reasoning is that, well, we would use it in the beginning in order to understand where we need to focus on fixing those issues. Then during a sort of a normal day-to-day work, you will get the alerts instead, and you fix those alerts when they come up.
So no need to prove that you're actually doing it?
Well, we need to prove that we have hardened the setup. So we can get the reports, of course, if needed. But
Cool. Thank you, LG.
Thank you.